is Garrett with another episode of Produce Your Freedom, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about a woodworking project I did, why you might want to take on woodworking as a hobby, and the basics, although not the detail, of how to go about making a nice cutting board like this. I made this as a gift for my wife for Christmas, so it's been a while since before I got around to shooting the video. But this was kind of my first project that I decided to do, of my own accord, I guess, that, my dad didn't suggest or something like that. He has an awesome shop, which I gotta thank him for letting me use, because a lot of the tools in there that it takes to make something this nice and this kind of fancy isn't really available to most people, so thank you. He also offered plenty of guidance, but, I kind of came up with the idea and what I wanted to do myself, and I've done some woodworking in the past, but nothing, like I said, nothing where I designed the project. So this is an end grain cutting board, and for people who don't know what that means and why it's such a good thing, is that most cutting boards that you'd either make out of wood, if you just kind of cut a slab of wood to a rectangle, you'd be cutting, if you picture the grains, you'd be cutting kind of across them. As soon as you flip like a 2x4, picture cutting across a 2x4 with your knife this way over and over, and then picture flipping it up on its end and then cutting across this way. It's better for your knives because you have all the end grain fibers exposed, and you kind of push them apart more easily as your knife runs over them, and they do tend to kind of close back up even on their own. So it's very gentle on your blade. It's better for your knives. They cost a lot more money, and they last a long time. A good cutting board like this should last years and years with some very basic maintenance of just once in a while, after you clean it, dry it well. If you really want to, you just sand it down so it's smooth again if you do get some knife wear into it, and you just use some oil again. So let's talk about how I kind of did this. The first step was to take, by the way, this is walnut and rock maple. And the first step was to find my pieces of that and to basically make these big, long, square sticks of it, right? And then glue them up together every other. So walnut, maple, walnut, maple, walnut, maple, etc. Actually, this many of them. And then after that, what you do, since you have this every other pattern and not a checkerboard, is you cut it. You have to use an even number of them. You cut this whole thing that you've made all these squares, you glue them up. They have to be totally dead square, no space, otherwise you'll get separation along these lines where they meet, and it won't be a very sturdy board. So you have to be really careful with the gluing, the cutting. Take some nice tools, some planers and stuff to make sure these are totally dead square so it works. Once you do that, you glue them up, and you clamp them kind of both ways this way, right? If you picture this being just one strip of walnut, one strip of maple at this point, clamp them up this way, snug, and then you also want them on something level. What I did actually was we used some clamps at a steel bar to them. So we clamped it one way, and then we actually used the bars themselves as one side of the clamping, and then the top as the other. You don't want to over clamp it because you'll make a bow in it. So when you clamp this thing up and you start slicing, and you want to slice now to the depth that you want the cutting board to be, which will kind of determine how many rows you have, so you have to do some planning ahead of time. So now you have these strips, walnut, maple, but they've also been sliced in this direction. Next step is you turn them on their end, so you expose the end grain. Up until then, we've had these long sticks that the side that's up is not the end grain, so you just rotate them this way. So now you kind of have your layout, and then you flip every other end over end, which is what's going to give you, the checkerboard pattern, because you started with one color and you ended with the other, and now you're just saying, okay, flip this one, now the maple's next to it, flip this one, now leave this one without being flipped, now you have the walnut on the end. This other one ended in maple, flip it, and now the maple's on this end. That's how you get the checkerboard. Then you just glue it up the opposite direction, get everything squared up again, and then you do your smoothing with maybe some hand planes, and then you just kind of work your way down grit-wise with sandpaper. The only other thing I did is you want to round these corners so they don't chip. So I took a power sander pretty quickly and just kind of held it like a 45-degree angle, zipped it around the edge, both sides, and then after that you just zip it down these corners. Again, kind of like a 45-degree angle, and you'll probably still have little points on each corner here, so you just tap it this way, this way, this way, this way, just for a second. And that's just to break up round the edge a little bit and make it not a right angle where when you're using a knife on it or something, or if you drop it, it may chip or break because it's this 90 degree. You want to make it this non-90 degree angle. After that, let everything settle, and then just use vegetable oil repeatedly on this. You don't want to use a stain or something that's going to hide the grain of the wood. Oils, natural oils like that, light colored oils tend to really bring the finish out. So rub it all over with a rag or whatever, let it soak in, do it again, overnight, do it again, do it a few times. Eventually it won't really want to seep into the wood, and you'll have a bunch of excess just kind of pooling on top, and you will see the color change and you're happy with where you are, and you'll leave it like that. Only other step is once in a while after you wash it, dry it well immediately. You probably want to throw some more oil on it and just kind of rub it in. I use like one of those barbecue brushes at that point just to kind of paint it on, so I'll just pour some veggie oil on it and wipe it back and forth and leave it one side up. Then once that's kind of absorbed in, later in the day I'll go back, flip it over, and do the other thing. So, fun little project. You could also just as easily do one that's not an end grain that still look beautiful just by alternating the blocks of wood, and you effectively cut off a lot of steps here. And you just have a nice striped cutting board that could work well too. It's going to be better than anything you buy in the store, and it'll get you into just kind of doing things with your hands. And the most important thing is how much I learned from the project itself, about what not to do. There were plenty of mistakes along the way too, but most of them were pretty well hidden at this point and came out pretty nicely. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope this encourages you to get into a little bit of woodworking. I'm not a master woodworker. I did have some great resources at my disposal, but if you started with a simpler project like just the strips, I'm pretty sure you can do it fairly easily as well. Hopefully this gives you some ideas, and remember, produce your freedom or life will produce your chains. I'm out.